Just like any other culture, Setswana, the culture and language of the people of Botswana, gives very special attention to the institution of marriage. The institution of marriage is widely considered a sacred union and a necessary act for the preservation of not only the family unit, but also the country at large. It is for this reason that for a wedding to take place in Botswana, there must be processes to be followed prior to the celebration. This video will therefore explore the stages and processes involved in a Setswana wedding. First and foremost, the first step involves what is called in the vernacular Pulamolomo, which literally translates to opening someone's mouth in order to speak. It is a token fee paid by the groom to make an official request for his family representatives to not only speak freely, but to also be heard by the bride's family. Traditionally paid in the form of a female goat or hen, Pulamolomo is paid to the bride's parents, who will then give a share to the uncles for them to start the negotiation process. Nowadays, however, the price is acceptable, if not preferable, in the form of money. It is, however, important to note that by accepting this fee, the bride's family agrees in principle to participate in the ensuing dialogue or negotiations. Now, having accepted Pulamolomo, the next or second phase will be for the groom's party to come and knock on the bride's door, and this is called kokota in the vernacular. It can best be understood as an expression of interest by the groom's party. The lead negotiator, who is the groom's uncle or malume in the vernacular, is tasked with presenting the expression of interest, and he must kneel in front of the bride's party when presenting their case. Upon receiving the expression of interest by the groom's party, the bride's party will only acknowledge a receipt, but will not give a response right away. Their response will be sent in the form of a letter of response, which marks the next stage in the negotiations, called Lokwalo. Lokwalo, or letter of response, which is written by the bride's party in response to kokota by the groom's party. It is through this letter that the bride's family, through malume and rakadi, outline and explain their demands on the bride price. The letter also explains and clarifies the family's cultural or ethnic ways in the event of a cross-cultural union. In the event that the couple had a child before wedlock, this letter will also be used to announce the Tlhagela charge, which will be discussed at a later stage. Following Lokwalo, there will be a response to Lokwalo, or a response to that letter, which is referred to as Puisanyo. Puisanyo in the vernacular can roughly be translated to mean dialogue or negotiations. And it is at this stage that the groom's party goes back to the bride's family to respond to the demands as outlined in the Lokwalo. As is the norm, the senior uncle and aunt will lead the groom's party in acknowledging receipt of the letter and to negotiate should they feel the need to. The bride's family, through their chief negotiator, can refuse or accede to their plea, but at the end, both families would have reached a mutual agreement. In the event, however, that a child was born prior to the negotiations or out of wedlock, the next stage will then be what is called in the vernacular or sneaking in charge. It is a charge, usually a cow, paid by the groom to the bride's parents through Malome and Rakadi as a form of compensation or apology for sneaking into their compound or house without permission. It can best be interpreted as a sign of restoring respect and dignity to the bride's parents for not only having a child before marriage, but to also appease the bride's parents on account of breaking their daughter's virginity before marriage. Since it is a form of a charge, the cow must be delivered on foot by the groom and his party. They must proceed to slaughter, skin, and cook the meat for the bride's family and neighbors. Having gone through step number 1 and the preliminary stages of the negotiations, now the two families are almost at the stage of celebrating a wedding. The first step or stage in step 2 is called in the vernacular kokota, which roughly translates to forever hold your peace. Kokota simply means to hang up in public, and it comes after the two families have agreed on the bride price. It is the time and process before the actual payment of the Bogadi or bride price, and it is at this point that the groom and bride's names are published for the first time, so that should anybody have reservations or objections to the proposed marriage, they should come forward before the groom commits by paying the bride price. The grace period for this is usually 14 days, and it is done at the district commissioner's office or the village ward through the headman's office. As soon as the 14 days elapse, the groom will be free to now proceed to the next stage, which is the most important stage of the Setswana traditional wedding, the bride price, which itself is referred to as Bogadi or Magadi, where Bogadi represents the singular form, while Magadi represents the plural form. Bogadi in this context is not necessarily buying the bride, but rather a form of appreciation from the groom to the bride's parents and the entire family for raising and nurturing his future wife. It is of paramount importance at this point to note that in the context of the Setswana culture, a man is considered legally married as soon as he has paid the Bogadi price. At the same time, the Botswana also interpret the Bogadi as a way for the groom to demonstrate and thus assure the bride's parents that he is a man capable enough of taking care of their daughter and future grandchildren. Normally paid in the form of cows, which must all be heifers. The Bogadi price or number of cows differ from tribe to tribe. The number, however, normally ranges from 4 to 8 as cultures differ from one place to the other, and it is always presented by the uncles in the company of aunts and received by the other side of the eye. It is also important to note at this point that for those families that do not have cows, or for one way or another are just not interested in cattle, the price is acceptable in monetary form, which itself is calculated according to an agreed price tag for each cow. What follows next now is what can be interpreted as end of forever hold your peace, or poloso in the vernacular. The term poloso can be translated roughly to mean bringing something down from whence it has been hanging or has been hanged. In this context, it refers to bringing down the bride and groom's name from the notice board following the previous process, go pega. This is only done if, number one, no one has come forward to oppose the idea of the two getting married. Secondly, none of the two, that is the bride and the groom, has changed their mind. Also, in a nutshell, marks the beginning of the wedding celebrations, or Lenyalo, sometimes even referred to setapa in the vernacular. Lenyalo or setapa basically means the union brought about by marriage. It is also called a setapa, which is derived from the English term step, meaning or signifying that the two are coming together in marriage and therefore will walk the same steps together in life from then onwards. It is also important to note here that traditionally one is considered married as soon as he has paid the bride price, as alluded to earlier on. It is at this point, however, that it is made public in the form of a celebration, since the Bogadi process only involves the selected few. During the wedding, all members of the community, regardless of class, creed, or whatever, extended relatives and friends are invited, and the two families are publicly introduced. Family trees are normally narrated by the elderly since this also marks the beginning of a union between the two families. The narration of the family trees is very important in teaching the younger generation their true bloodline, so that they get to avoid issues of incest and to allow them to just appreciate where they come from. Depending on what the two families agreed upon, the celebrations can take the form of a white wedding or a traditional form of wedding. The latter is held at the village ward or kota and is led by the headman and village elders. It is also the groom's responsibility during these days to ensure that the guests are fed. He also has to provide a tent for the shade, groceries, and a cow to be slaughtered at the bride parents' house, as well as at his parents' house, for the usually two-legged celebration. The first leg is held at the bride parents' home, while the second leg goes to the groom's parents. Invitation is normally open to all, regardless of relations. It is a true open celebration, a declaration of a very important union. During the celebrations, there are quite other processes that follow. The most important being Apesa, which refers to dressing up the bride. It is important because in the Setswana culture, after the payment of Bogadi and Lenyalo celebrations, a woman has to be separated or distinguished from the single. Unmarried women in their community or society do not have to appear, to look, or to dress like married women. This is done through dressing up the bride in the traditional kiba or leteisi, together with the mohaholwane or African attire worn in a blue color or with a blue shawl on the shoulders. This form of dress or uniform is strictly reserved for the married women so as to differentiate them from their unmarried counterparts. It is worn during special occasions like Patlo, Lenyalo, and other important community gatherings. This dress code is also used to symbolize the stature of a married lady and to demand the society to give them respect. Over and above all, this dress is meant to make other unmarried women look forward to getting dressed up too. It is another way of encouraging young people to get married. Wapesa, or dressing up the bride, is done specifically by Mamalome or Rakadi in the absence of the former. And this exercise leads to yet another important exercise in the Botswana or Setswana wedding process, Tao, or marriage counseling. It is usually done in the presence of all the aunts from both the sides of the groom and the bride. It is important to note that when it comes to Tao, entry is strictly permitted to the above mentioned or elderly married people from the neighborhood as invited by the elders mentioned above. The term Tao, as stated, basically means counseling and giving direction, and it refers to when an elderly or married members of the community are invited together with the two families representatives to give marriage counseling and direction to the newlyweds. It is conducted on the day of the celebration just before sunset, and it is done in secret, away from the unmarried. Note, however, that the bride is taken aside first by the ladies, led by Pulamolomo and Magadi, while the groom will be with the men under the guidance of Malume. As soon as the process of marriage counseling is done, the next and final step is what is called go isa ngwetsi in the vernacular Setswana language, or meaning delivering the bride to the groom's parents' home, or to the groom to tell the groom now that officially the wife is yours. After the counseling sessions, this party is led by Magadi with the support of Pulamolomo, and it signifies the bride's final and permanent relocation or separation from her parents to join her new family and eventually start her own with her husband. Meanwhile, the groom and his party will be waiting at his parents' home to receive his wife and and retire for an early bed, which is prepared by the groom's party. As soon as the bride and groom disappear into their hut or house, the celebrations will be officially over and the two of them considered officially partners, lifetime partners, husband